What is up? Welcome to the American Peloton. I am Jonathan Crane. I'm a mediocre Cat 2 cyclist out of Birmingham, Alabama.
I am Ben, former elite mountain biker, current head coach at Skyway Cycling, current team director at Skyway Cycling, presented by Domestique Coffee. We got a lot of news, so let's, as we usually do, just go right into it.
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff. So I guess up top, I got to give a shout out to Criterium Nation podcast, Rob Kelly, for having me on, guess last week, 2 weeks ago. Recent episode talking about the NCL. Really appreciate him inviting me on. Hopefully, we got I saw a bump in subscribers to this channel, so hopefully, we got a few new people joining us tonight. We're going to talk about bike racing all over America, including some NCL stuff. If you're here for the latest and greatest in NCL coverage, we're definitely going to get there in the main chunk of the show. I guess as we normally do, we're going to like start local and go bigger from there. So first, I just wanted to shout out the Temple of Zoom series, which is our local Criterium series. We've got week 3 happening tomorrow. Ben, are you going to race that?
Oh, for sure. I don't plan on missing a single week. I might even do 2 races. We'll see.
Nice. I tried to talk my physical therapist into letting me race today, and he was like, give it one more week. So I'm hoping to be out there at the next one. So if I am, I'm definitely going to run the GoPro and, give it the full treatment. I did do my first like group ride since my bevy of injuries, ankle, shoulder, all that stuff last night, which was awesome. Did the Tuesday Night Worlds
Did you
ride.
GoPro last night?
No, I did not. I didn't think I would have anything worth GoProing, but it turned out Jay Brunn from the Zwift Next team was there. I ended up in a 2-man break that went all the way with Thor from Dirt Camp Pro Cycling, and
There
I
was a
jumped
lot
in.
of like fun attacking and pack dynamics that whole because we had a crazy crosswind. It just started off and then block headwind, tailwind, block headwind. So it
Yeah,
was
it was a
like
good,
lots of fun
interesting
pack
night.
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, everybody hates on that course, but I don't hate it as much as everybody else.
I hate it. Like I think if
Everybody hates it, but it always races well. I don't know.
it didn't race well until people realized that we actually had to like race it hard to get like a proper like A group going. Like until then, it raced terribly because there weren't enough like attacking. There wasn't enough attacking and like things to make it hard to get some of the people who like don't need to be going
It
30
didn't,
plus in a group
yeah, it didn't split
out
up
of the group.
enough.
So
I'll say this. I think we just need to add another loop on. So like right now the race simulation's like 40 minutes. I think we need to add another loop so it's like 60 minutes. I think that
yeah,
would do it.
I agree.
Anyway, moving from our like immediate sphere. So we had some guys out at Tiger Town, right?
Yeah, well, we had two. Both were in the Pro 123, and like before we even had a chance to like ask how it went, he Rob Sorrell sends a text to our team Discord and goes, Ty Magner just lapped the field and almost lapped it twice, and we were like,
Yeah.
what? We're like,
So
what? It's crazy.
Ty lapped the field, and it wasn't because no one was there. If you look, second place was Gabe Mendez, who we interviewed 2 episodes back about the NCL. And then we got Owen Schott in third from Velobrew, who, if you don't know, like he's been Masters national champion, made some winning breakaways at ACC pro races. An NGCA rider, which they are going to be doing NCL per the NCL team announcement. So yeah, it was there were people at this race.
Hold up.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't know this.
You're seeing
Kerry
this.
Warner was there. Former Pan American cross champion Kerry Warner was there.
Yeah, and
That's crazy.
he was 6th. Yeah. So I pointed all those out. Also in 13th down here, Enzo Hincapie, which
Yeah.
that is that is the Hincapie you're thinking of. It's George's son, Enzo. I think he's still even a 3, so he's getting those points. He's moving on up.
I
But
think you're
yeah,
right.
my point in mentioning all of those results was to be like, this isn't one of those things that has happened to me before where Ty shows up to what is essentially a local race and he's like the only like pro guy. And so he's just running circles around everybody.
Yeah,
There
he's
were,
done that at Auburn a couple times. He's done
yeah,
it like he'll just like show up randomly to like random
he,
local Southeast races and like lap the field 3 times in a crit and go home.
back when he was on United Healthcare, he used to show up to the cyclocross races in Georgia sometimes in his UHC kit with the helmets that looked like a stormtrooper helmet. UHC had like particularly crazy helmets back then, and he would show up in that insane helmet and on a full suspension, like full squish mountain bike with 2.4s, and like I don't know. I don't think he ever lapped me, but definitely coming close to lapping me.
Just so
Definitely
smooth.
wiping the floor with me on a tire that had like 40, 50 more watts of rolling resistance.
Right, right. Yeah, for you to go like 250 average and he's like 300 average just to go the same speed. So he's doing like 350 or something crazy.
And he's
Like
a bigger boy than I
monster.
am. Yeah. He's got some serious watts on me. Um so I think I say that to say we've raised the question of like, where's Legion at? How are they going? It seems like everyone from Legion is sort of doing their own regional stuff and they're kind of like slowly ramping up. I guess that is a little bit of a natural transition to one of the things we had on the docket, which I appreciate. After every show comes out, there are a bunch of people who send me little tidbits that they know about what's going on or just, want to chat about American racing. And one thing that came in after the last episode, I was talking to a guy whose team had flirted with doing the NCL, and I asked him, "Hey, what's going on with CRT?" And he was like, "I think that's maybe not happening." So it looks like. Oh, also, I found out what the acronym is supposed to be: Circuit Race Tour.
Inter- Interesting.
So
I
the
don't hate that.
acronym,
Yeah.
yeah, the acronym for a race series that may or may not be happening. But he was saying that his team was, and I don't want to burn my sources here, but this is a someone who would know. His team was talking to Legion about joining this series up until a month and a half ago, and then it kind of went up in smoke. So they are building their entire schedule. This is a domestic elite team that races nationally. They're building their entire schedule, assuming that CRT does not happen this year. So that may just be off the table.
Which that I mean, if CRT is completely off the table, that kind of alleviates some of our initial concern at the start of the year with like saturation and it being too long of a year.
Yeah,
Like I want there to be more racing, but I think that
there
there's either
there can
lack of
only be
organization or they're realizing the saturation and are pulling the
yeah,
brakes a little bit. I
there
don't
can
know.
only be so many like national level criteriums, At
Yeah.
least like we can only jump to so many more in one season, and we were like trying to basically double the number that are out there in one season without doubling the amount of teams. It was too big of a jump too fast.
Yeah.
Going from ACC existing and having a successful season to then add NCL, add CRT, and then you got all the other races that are not a part of any of those series, but still kind of on that level, like your armed forces, your the other 8 races of Dairyland, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It was more races than we could really support, I think.
Yeah, and I think maybe they looked at it and they're like, this isn't going to work this year. We don't have it organized enough. Or they just said, hey, there's too much. We're going to pump the brakes, reevaluate, figure out how we can integrate it more effectively. Or maybe they just like need a little bit more strategy to pull it off. I
Yeah.
don't know.
That does beg the question though, because we had kind of posited like maybe the reason we're not seeing Legion racing as a team this early at any of the early stuff is that they're going to do a slow build and then really focus on CRT, which would make a ton of sense. And same thing with Aviators and Blazers that are kind of the like Legion offshoot teams. They've been doing the same thing. Like Iman Lucas was out at some California local races last week. He's on Aviators. I think they're all kind of just saying like, do your local stuff early season, but none of them have released full schedules. So I'm wondering if we're going to see any of those teams doing the full ACC, or if all three of the Legion teams are going to do the same thing the NCL teams are doing, where they pick and choose and none of them do the full series, but all of them do some. There's overlap. Like there is always a Legion team at all the ACC races,
Yeah,
but all three don't do the whole series.
that might be what they're going for. Like we know that Ty wants to win the Speed Week overall. Like that's and he's fit for it right now. I think that we're going to see Ty maybe peak for this because I know like we know that some of those big national races he's going to be working for Corey, Justin, somebody else. So I
Yeah, I
think
think I think that's probably like the biggest stipulation in his contract is like he has to be the leader at Athens.
yeah,
That's my guess. I haven't seen his contract, but I'm betting that he's going to be the leader at Athens, which I think another reason I wanted to bring that up is I think he is probably the strongest rider on Legion at the moment. Honestly, he's the most well-rounded. I'll say, like he can win from a breakaway, he can force the breakaway, he can sprint with almost anybody in the country.
yeah. I think he's definitely like, you know how they do a tire chart and it's a circle and it's like durability, puncture resistance, speed, grip. Like he has the most complete. Like he's hitting 4 out of 5 of those points. Like, and I don't think anybody else on Legion is doing that. I think they're a lot more specified in I sprint. I'm a workhorse. So I think he's the strongest overall, probably.
Yeah, totally, totally agree. I will say, Automatic released a schedule, or at least I've seen a schedule from them, and they are not going all in on ACC the way they did last season. They've got some targeted. I think the deal is they're going to have a squad at all of the ACC races, but they are not going to send their like full A squad to every race. And I don't think Tom is going to chase the overall the way he has in the past.
I think that's a strong play for them. I think for them, it took a lot of budget, time, and resource to do all of those races. And I don't know if they got the return they were hoping for. I
I,
know, like, we know Tom is really focused on track right now. Like, he
yeah.
wants to go to the Olympics for track. So I think there's going to be, like, for him, a little more emphasis on that. And I think they're going to send people to ACC and, like, be a proper team, but maybe not put all their eggs in that basket.
So I hope that we do end up getting at least a couple of races where we do have like both NCL teams, all three Legion teams, and Automatic at the same race, and we don't get a thing where
Yeah.
like they don't all face off at one time because they're kind of like splitting their energy. I do think that ACC is going to be like the premier. That's going to be sort of like the Clash of the Titans series this year, where um, that Venn diagram overlaps the most.
Yep. Yeah, I think that makes sense because, like, we know the Legion teams are not like we know who's doing NCL for sure, and so like so all those teams like the most of the premier teams are not doing NCL. We know so
Yep.
that's going to be ACC is where they're all going to clash, and then the premier NCL teams that like Denver Disruptors, Miami Knights are strong. Those rosters are crazy. Like ACC is gonna be the big show this year.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm excited. I think we're both planning. I'm hoping to be able to race um, Athens. I don't know if I'm going to get clearance from the doctors for that. I don't know if that's going to be wise, but I'm definitely going to be at um, the first two. That's what I'm hoping is that I'll be at Athens and I'll be at Sunny King. So we'll be there on site. I'll definitely have some other content around that. So hopefully we'll have like eyes on the first couple of races of the season.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
want to
I'm
talk about.
definitely will be at
Go ahead.
Athens. No, I'll definitely be at Athens and Hapeville and College Park and LaGrange. Like I'll be at all of the Speed Week that aren't in the middle of the week. So we'll definitely and then Sunny King. So we'll definitely have
I've been
eyes on the
thinking
ground
about
there.
going the other way. I might like take Speed Week off and like go watch Athens and then do the 2-3 races of some of the ones during the week that are like a little bit less of a dogfight. With my shoulder right now, the deal is basically like I could race today. I'm like structurally sound enough to race. I am not structurally sound enough to crash.
Yeah,
So if I fall on this shoulder again, it's like I'm going straight to surgery, and I do not want to do that. So
yeah,
my PT who does like ride bikes and race bikes, he was like, you should race and you need to start like building that muscle memory up again, but also like don't just go jump headlong into like the craziest stuff with the highest chance of crashing. So I'm
yeah.
gonna be easing my way back in, but yeah, Speed Week, super psyched for Speed Week. I hope they stream all those races again like they did last year. Even if I'm out there, I'll probably like rewatch or something, but yeah, be on the
Yeah.
lookout for that. But speaking of races that are like things we had talked about doing at least and things we'd mentioned on the show, Joe Martin had we talked about how we were losing stage races and Joe Martin had we had planned to do it and then they axed the amateur race. They have now brought it back? Question mark. Sort of.
They're like I don't. They're adding like an amateur 1-2-3. So
Yeah.
like an amateur 1-2-3 will take place over the course of what was going to be the amateur stage race. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me why they would just make it a 1-2-3 because if they're saying we have to have 125 people or else we won't do it, which is confusing because now it's if I'm a 1, 2, or 3 wanting to do that race, what am I paying into? Like if I pay that and they only have 120 people sign up, like what am I actually paying for? Am I going to get a refund? Like it just makes a lot of question marks happen to where like I don't see them coming back for that. Like I don't
Yeah.
see an amateur race actually happening.
I want to say it's good that they realized the mistake, but also yeah, it's like maybe too little too late for this year. I hope that this is not the death knell of the amateur race, but Arkansas is like not it's not super easy to get to even for us, and I think there are probably a lot of other amateurs that are in the same position that we are where they were thinking about or planning on doing it, and then when it was announced that it wasn't happening, they just kind of moved that like whatever resources, real estate on the calendar to something else, and you're not going to change again on the hope that it's maybe going to happen. We're not.
Yeah. That's the thing is like from a business perspective, like one thing that keeps your customers is like reliability and consistency. So like you have to be consistent in what you do. So for them taking something off, that's fine. If you don't want to have an amateur stage race, fine, take it off. But then don't double back. And then like don't put out another thing on Biker Edge saying that it's going to be like it's going to be like a time trial and crit and then a fondo. Like there's too much confusion about it. It's like if you have like a streaming platform and you change the UI every 3 months, people are going to stop subscribing because they can't figure your app out. Like people aren't going to register for a race if they don't know what they're actually registering for anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to create a little bit of confusion, but so moving from like an American racing negative that we've talked about before to an American racing positive, we have mentioned in the past the Matteo Jorgensen, some of the good results that American riders have had on the world tour scene, and I feel like this year we've had more of those to talk about than any previous year. Not that this show has been going, but like we're always having these conversations, and there's been
Yep.
a lot of good ones this year.
Yeah, like 2023 has been a really good year for Americans in the World Tour. Like
Matteo
Nielsen,
Jorgensen top 10 at Flanders.
yep,
That's pretty big.
Yeah, that's huge. Like, when's the last time an American got top 10 at Flanders? Was it like
Was it
Taylor Finney, maybe? Was he even?
did Hincapie finish the year he Oh no, that was Roubaix, right? Where he broke his bars.
Yeah, it was Roubaix. So, like, yeah, we can't even like name the last time someone got a top in America got a top 10 at Roubaix. And two people from America were top 10 at Flanders this year. Nielsen Powis, fifth place, was in the break all day. Like, he
Yeah,
was in the early break, stuck it out,
right.
and then sprinted for fifth. Like, he lost the sprint to Wout.
I think
Like,
it's a big deal
you
that
know,
these are that they're not just having big rides, but they're like, animating the race, making moves. They're not just kind of sneaking in there on a technicality or like being that guy that sits at the back of the group that gets underestimated and gets like, a sneaky or a cheeky result. Like these are legitimate rides that, I don't want to do the thing that we as Americans always do though, which is to we get someone who does well and then we say like, this is the next Lance. We got an American winner of the tour here. So
yeah,
no pressure, Mateo. You're doing great. Just keep doing what you're doing.
yeah,
Sepp Kuss, keep it up. All you guys, don't worry. I don't expect you to win the tour. I appreciate the results as they're rolling in. Just keep riding hard and rolling those dice.
yeah. Like, I don't care if we ever have an American Tour de France winner. Like, as long as we have guys that are consistent, riding hard, getting results, whether it's in Grand Tours or Classics or Monuments, like, as long as that's happening, like, having a strong GC rider, like, I'm okay. Like, I don't want to trade having a strong GC rider and having no other people like getting results. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I would love if an American did win the tour. I guess what I'm saying is like every time we have someone who's good at all at anything, then we force them to try to be a GC rider and try to be a
Right.
GC rider for the tour specifically, and then
Right.
that pressure and probably the fact that that's not like actually what they're good at ends their career. So we're not
That's
going
fair.
that way
Yeah.
with any of these guys. We're fine with how they're doing. We appreciate their efforts. Yeah. Oh, another thing we wanted to talk about on today's show is that ACC is not going to be on outside this year.
Thank God. That was those streams were so hard to find. Like, until you like we got in the habit of checking outside, but the first like Sunny King stream, like I was telling people, hey, this is live stream, but like I don't know how to find it.
Yeah,
Then like it took until like 20 minutes for the race to find the stream. It's gonna
that's
be
a
on
big
YouTube.
yeah, that's a big
Like,
part of why I was doing what I was doing last year and doing my watch alongs on Twitch and on YouTube because I knew there were a lot of people out there who knew that the race was happening and just would not know where to find. And I had people finding my stream on YouTube and then saying, "Hey, where are you watching this?" And I would give them the link to outside. Like you can just go around me if you want to. I'm I'm trying to hang out with the people who want to watch it with me. I'm not trying to like gatekeep the outside stream or whatever. But with that in mind, I'm probably not going to be doing a YouTube watch along while there's a stream happening on YouTube. But I'm definitely going to be making content about those races and we're going to be talking about them here. But
yeah.
they're also not streaming all of them though. So only some ACC races have a stream lined up already. Others are like in the process of maybe figuring that out, but it may be that there are less of them, but they are easier to get to this year.
Yeah, because I think like the way the outside partnership was going, outside was footing the bill for those streams, so that's why they were fairly, higher quality, reliable, happening every single one except the one in Rochester. Like the ones that like we like really were like, I want to watch this one. The streams failed, but like the so again, like we've talked about how you can get a decent stream for not a lot now. So I'm hoping these races that we're heavily relying on the outside stream tech, we're like taking notes and like, okay, we can implement this to maybe a slightly lesser extent.
Yeah, I think the CBR races, which we've talked about on here, are proving that you can do a pretty, those live streams are not on the level of production that the ACC streams are on, but they're also doing those on a fraction of the budget. So I think
Yeah.
now the budget that ACC has should continue to go farther and farther. It's getting easier and easier to do these streams. If CBR can run a drone to cover like the back half of the course that they can't get with a camera, that's clearly becoming easier to do. So I
Yeah.
hope that continues to get better. Speaking of those California races, um, Team Six, who upset Corey and Justin a few weeks ago at CBR, had a win this week.
Yeah. They won Tour de Marietta. I don't know how big of a race Tour de Marietta was, but like it's big enough for us on the East Coast to have heard of. They won it, so it was cool to see another like them repeat a similar result, like not just be a flash, but
Yeah,
seeing a level of consistency to that. I think they're going to be fun to watch this year.
yeah, and some of those guys reached out after the last show. Forgive me, I was trying to pull up their Instagram. One of you guys, if you're watching, send me a link to the team Instagram. I cannot find it right now. I'm trying to throw it up on the screen, but yeah, a few of those guys reached out after the last show and were like, "Hey, thanks for talking about us.
Yeah,
Appreciate it." So yeah, shout out to them. Hope to see them again, mixing it up on that national circuit with the NCL teams, the Legion teams. All those. It's going to be a really interesting year. There's a lot of teams coming in very hot, and they're due to the stuff we've talked about in other shows about how the scene is sort of like stage races are dwindling. I think all of these new teams they're kind of being funneled into these national races. There's a lot of teams stepping down from like the pro Conti level, and then a lot of teams stepping up from amateur to like uh what is that? Elite,
domestic elite.
domestic elite.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of domestic elite teams that are looking to race nationally that are like actually there's a lot of talent.
yeah,
So it's going to be a good season. It's going to be fun to watch.
yeah. Like I think this year is going to be the most exciting year for crit racing since like 2018, probably. I mean,
Yeah.
because that's like the last year before the Legion train like really took hold of everything, and that's like the last year of Red Hook, I think.
Yeah.
So like this is going to be a really fun year to watch.
And that was a year where, so like the Legion train brought a lot of eyeballs into the sport and a lot of like it was a storyline that was easy for people to grasp. It was like a Tiger Woods event where it was like there's this one powerful force in the sport, and if you're an outsider you can just kind of like watch this team the way people who weren't paying attention to golf, or like if you want to go back to Lance Armstrong, the way people, Americans, were like,
Yep.
I don't really understand cycling, but I know that Lance Armstrong is good, so I'm gonna like watch him do the tour. I think Legion did that for crit racing a few years ago,
Yep.
but then it has not been the most exciting thing to watch. It's impressive to watch them just like sit on the front and motor the whole time, but it hasn't been the most like dynamic racing.
Yeah.
And part of their goal was to raise the level, and I think they have raised the level, and other people are potentially maybe starting to catch up. We'll see this year, I guess.
Yeah. I think teams are catching up. And if they're not caught up, like it's gonna be really evident. I think there's gonna be 5, 6, 7 teams that are on that level ripping it. And I think those 5, 6, 7 teams that aren't quite there, I think we might see a decent disparity or see like the 1 or 2 stars on those lower tier teams like have crazy seasons and then they get on those bigger tier teams next year.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Um, I think that covers. So we've covered all of the non NCL stuff, I think, and this is it. This is the week of NCL race one. So we got a couple of little segments I want to do about NCL coming up. The first of which is someone sent me this article from jralong.com. I'm putting a link to this article in the description of this video, but it is about the previous incarnation of NCL, which apparently ran from 1988 to 1994. This is something that I had heard. I'd heard people batting around like, oh yeah, they tried this in the 90s. And what I thought people meant by that was just like there was a league that was either doing points-based crits or doing city-based teams or like some combination of those, but it was literally called NCL, which I did not realize. This article goes into a lot of the history of it. There's some recognizable writers. Chris Horner was in there. Yeah, if
Yeah.
one of the only American Grand Tour winners who hasn't had their Grand Tour revoked for doping. So it wasn't just, nothing. Steve Tilford. There's some pretty interesting old Houston Outlaws was one of the teams, and I'm looking at the logo right now. Pretty cool, honestly. I would love just that on a jersey. I think on the slow ride they were batting around some potential names, and uh, the Owls was one they were saying. The Ohio Owls or something like that. It was definitely an Omaha Owls, I think. But yeah, Houston Outlaws, pretty cool.
That's a cool logo. That's like a tattoo.
Yeah,
Like just the face there is like a good tattoo.
if they can get their graphic design, if the new NCL can get their graphic design on this level, I'll buy some merch for sure. I would love to find like a T-shirt of this on eBay or something.
Oh, for
The
sure.
coolest thing, there's a bunch of cool stuff in this article, and again, there's a link here. There's an article from Winning Magazine here. The coolest thing in it is there is a full race video. There's an entire race from Toronto, 1994. The original NCL was apparently international. They had a Toronto team, they had an Italy team. The race that we're looking at right now only had 3 teams in it. I watched this entire race the other day. They did the point structure a little different. Honestly, the previous NCL that I did not know about when we were talking about the point series or the point structure rather, they did their point structure closer to what I wish this NCL was doing, which they did every 3 laps is a points lap, and then those points go 5 deep rather than every lap is a points lap and then they're 1 through 3 deep.
Yeah.
They also did last lap is double points, same thing.
I like a 5 deep model. Like I love like a wide angle podium. I think 5 makes sense. So like NCL I feel like should have had, because then you can create bigger points gaps or like more interesting point like tabulations going 5
Yeah.
deep, So I don't know.
Yeah, the Shakers and the Outlaws are two. I guess is it Toronto? I guess the Shakers is the Toronto. There was a Miami team too in this league, so it does. Okay, I'll say having watched this and kind of like gaming out some of the things that I was thinking about what might happen with NCL. I will say it is dynamic racing. It was fun to watch. This whole thing went by really quickly because there is a point sprint every 3 laps. So there's always someone trying to do something, whether it's somebody trying to get up the road early to get those points, other teams chasing them back, the things splitting after a sprint. Like it is pretty dynamic, but I think that tempo of like every 3 laps, it's a sprint makes them real sprints. Like they are actually sprinting on those every 3 laps.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we're going to see that in this NCL. So that's like a positive, but also what we're looking at right now, there are no points on screen and they don't do a great job. I mean, this was 1994, so the capability graphics wise was not quite as good. But watching it, I did keep having to rewind because I would be like, wait, is this a points lap? And then I would like lose track and not know. They don't do a great job of saying like the lap that is beginning now is a points lap. So key into what's going on. And then there's also not like instant point tabulation happening all the time. So while I am watching some pretty aggressive racing, I'm not totally sure what's going on. Also, all of their jerseys look too similar.
Yeah, the jerseys are all like identical almost. I'm this is like bike nerd coming out, but I'm seeing are you familiar with the Scott Mass Start Legal Aero bars?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
ones where the
I'm
drop.
seeing a few of those in here and I'm
Yeah,
like freaking
yeah.
out because I've
Where
never
the
seen anyone actually I have a pair. I own a pair of them, but I've never seen
nice.
anybody actually use them. So I'm
Yeah.
like I like peeked them out and I was like, "Oh, that's so cool." So
There's also a
way
guy in
off
here
topic,
with
but
double Spinergies. Not the tri-spoke solid carbon wheels, but the Spinergies that are like the four big carbon
oh god.
spokes. And he wins a couple of sprints on them. There's also a guy sprinting right now with a serious ponytail. There's some great 90s stuff in here. They're also all in skin suits, which I feel like for 94, that's like pretty progressive. This is pretty, like
Like
Lamond did that in the tour in like what, 89 maybe?
something like that because 89 was the year where he like went full in on some arrow stuff and that's why he won. So
Yeah.
like
But I feel like most everyone in the 90s was riding like pretty baggy stuff. So,
that was like club cut like was the standard. So yeah.
yeah. So they're popping these points up here and there, but a lot of what they're doing is like showing the lineup for a team and then how many points they had scored total that season and stuff like that. You really almost need it. This confirmed something I thought, which is you almost need for this to be like a video game with like a GUI, like a heads up display that's just
Yeah.
like constantly showing you what's going on in the race. Otherwise, you are just kind of watching guys ride hard. It's good, interesting racing. And it was, again, there's a link below the YouTube video. I will put it in the description of the audio podcast too if you want to link out to this and watch it. Probably by the time a lot of people watch this or listen to this episode, we're going to be pretty close to the actual NCL race number 1 happening. But yeah, interesting stuff about the previous NCL. It does seem like it lasted for 5 years, which is not a bad run, but also there was a little bit of bad blood at the end. They were going to do a championship in Monte Carlo, and that just never happened, and a bunch of people didn't get paid, and it just kind of went away. So,
Jeez. Yeah.
yeah, hope that doesn't happen again. But that kind of brings me to our prime
Do we
segment
wait
of the night.
before we do that, do we
Sure.
want to go over the teams that are going to be racing the NCL? Like
Do
do
you
we
have it
want to
in?
do that first or do we want to do that during
Do you
that segment?
do you have it in front of you?
I can get it
Okay.
in front of me in like 30 seconds.
Yeah. Because we are live, and that is not one of the 10 things I have pulled up already. So
I'm
yeah,
getting it
if
up.
cool. If you can do that, that is one of the things that got announced in the wake of the podcast I did with Criterium Nation. I do feel like we maybe came a little bit hard at the NCL in that podcast, but it did result in them sort of answering some of the questions that were unanswered, including who are the teams that are going to race. So, I feel like that was maybe warranted. I
Yeah.
don't know, but we are going to try and give NCL a pretty fair shake tonight. Um, and I'll say for everyone listening and watching, my official stance on NCL at this point is I am excited to watch it, skeptical because of the history of these things in cycling and the fact that I don't understand what their business model is long term.
Yeah.
But so excited but skeptical is my official position.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I have their website listed up. The desktop site doesn't like
Of
hold on.
course.
Doesn't like show which teams are partnered with which. So I'm going to pull up their Instagram on my phone
Yeah.
and like share the screen for the list of teams and then go to their Instagram on my phone and kind of go who's partnering with who.
Sure. Sounds good.
All right. So sharing the screen now. Good. Did it really just do that? I like pulled the I like when you pull the tab and it creates a whole new window on accident.
Yep.
Yeah, it did that. Okay. So the participating teams, and we kind of mentioned earlier that some of the more premier teams aren't doing it. Um,
We
so
already knew a lot of teams that weren't doing it. So let's say who we know: the Miami Knights, Denver
yep,
Disruptors, those are the built-in NCL teams.
yep.
Who's filling out the rest of that roster?
All right. So CCB Alpine, presented by the Levine Law Group, is going to be partnered with Foundation Cycling New York. Those are kind of like partner sister team. You might remember CCB Foundation, the under 23 development team. Those are kind of they were the, like CCB is the women's team of that, and Foundation is the men's team of that.
I,
Um,
I want to say like Adam Meyerson maybe did his last season with Foundation, and like Dan Chabanov used to race for them. Somebody in the chat tell me if I'm wrong there, but I think that was true. That was before it was CCB Foundation. That was like
yeah,
just Foundation.
yeah, and then Fount Cycling Guild, they're having a men's and women's team racing together.
I know nothing about that team. Do you know anything about that team?
Their kit was very familiar when I looked at it, but I don't know anybody on it, or
I
and I
guess we're
don't
gonna
know
find
anything about
out.
them. Yeah, right.
We'll find out on
Um,
Saturday.
so we have Goldman Sachs ETFS Racing pairing with Texas Roadhouse. That's going to be a fun one to watch. That's one of the two pairings that I think can really make the NCL teams work for it a little bit. Texas Roadhouse, Drew Dillman, Cade Bickmore. Cade Bickmore's still on them, right?
I believe so. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I haven't. We haven't seen them race as a full squad yet this year, so I guess we're gonna find out who they do and don't have still at this
Yeah.
first race. Who's the guy with the mustache who races for them?
Fergus?
Yes, Arthur
Yeah.
Fergus. Fergus Arthur.
Fergus
I've never
Arthur,
known.
something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
He's good.
then, yep. And then Monarch Racing is a women's team pairing with Team Mike Spikes. That is the team of NorCal Cycling. Drawing a blank on his name. That's his team
Jeff
coming.
Linder.
Yep, Jeff Linder. That's his team. They're racing together. Another like team. When I saw that, I was like, "That's
They've
odd," but it
had
makes sense why they would be in it. But I didn't
yeah.
expect them to be.
No, me either. They normally stick to West Coast like California stuff, and they do the big races in California. But yeah, that's a big jump for them. They have had some good, getting back to the kind of like teams having success locally. They did a race recently in, forgive me, I forget the name of the race because it's not like a big national race, Santa Cruz area, and they won the whole Omnium and beat um, Lance Haydet, Tobin Ortenblad, several other strong.
Yeah.
Iman Lucas was there.
Oh,
So
the Cat's Hill one.
yeah,
Yeah,
that one and another race are like an omnium together, and Mike Spikes won both. So
yeah,
strong squad.
yeah, strong for sure. And then I'm gonna mispronounce this. Primo Velo Racing is pairing with Kelly Benefit Cycling. Kelly Benefits being one of the premier like young guy like send guys to Spain kind of development teams.
The
They're going to
kid
be
who
super
crashed
strong.
me out at Sunny King last year was from. Go watch my Sunny King video.
Oh
See a
geez,
kid in that kit hook bars with somebody on the last lap.
jeez, but like
Big
that, yeah, they're always pretty strong.
big
Liam,
aggressive junior energy there.
yep, Liam Flanagan, ex national champion. Patton Sims was like a track national champion at some point. Like they have a
Oh
strong
yeah,
squad.
yeah. Patton
Um,
is a beast. I've had to
yep,
race him a bunch.
yeah, and
He's
then
good.
yep, they're pairing with, and then Roxo Racing is pairing with Volet Factory Racing. Roxo Racing has been one of those women's teams that's been knocking on the door in some national and regional crits, but have just kind of been overshadowed by the Legions and
Yeah,
LA Sweats of the world. But they're strong, and I think they'll be able to
they're
compete for sure.
they're one of those teams that like they did step up their level, but they did it at the exact same time that Legion stepped up their level. So it was like
Yep.
the entire everything just moved up around them, and they kind of stayed at the same spot in the field, but going faster. If that makes sense, it's like
Yep.
the whole field sped up, and they stayed fifth wheel.
Right. Yeah. That's exactly what happened. Valet Factory Racing, I can't name anybody who's on them, but they've been a pretty solid domestic elite team for a couple years. Are you familiar with anyone on their roster now?
I feel like I've raced with some of them like on Zwift and on RGT. I think some of them did Echelon Racing League. So yes, I think, but no names are coming to mind. I've definitely seen them. They were a USA Crits team. So
Gotcha. Yeah.
yeah, they've been around a minute.
And then Team Skyline, this is going to be a fun one to watch. I think Team Skyline is a team that can step up to the NCL teams in a real way. They're a
Maybe a little bit of a
UCI,
sleeper hit. Yeah,
yeah, they're UCI team. They're going to be ripping.
I think they've been doing mostly, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think they've been mostly doing the sort of dying out stage races recently that like have not gotten a lot of coverage. So I'm not sure if like they've been on the radar as much as some of the crit teams that are not like UCI teams. So it'll be interesting to see like how they go in this league. I mean, it's a totally different format, and yeah, I'm just not sure we've seen them mixing it up with this group of teams before. So kind of a wild card there, or like overlooked because the races they've been doing have not been getting a ton of coverage. I will
Yeah,
say one of Wolfgang Brandl, I think, was on their team, did well at Speed Week last year, but he was kind
yeah,
of just like racing it privateer style, but like made several winning breaks at Speed Week. Definitely said his name a lot on this podcast or
yep,
on this show on this channel.
yeah. And then the last team is teamsuperbars.com. They're fielding a men's and women's squad, kind of like a regional 1, 2, 3 team in the southeast.
Yep.
Um,
Guys we
we're
race with a
acquainted with
lot.
some folks on that. We've worked with them to bring breaks back in races before.
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah,
like
we
strong squad overall.
Auburn race last year with who was in that break? It was like Matt Govero,
Owen
Brock
Shot.
Mason maybe up there. Yeah, Owen Shot was up there, and like our team and Supra got together to work to bring that back. So yeah, got a lot of familiarity with that squad, and that's a men's
Yeah.
and women's together.
Yeah. So those are the 10 squads that are pairing up for NCL. Now let's get into the pros and cons because I
Yeah,
did one of the things we're going to talk about is the teams, and I wanted to make sure there was full context before we dove into
yeah,
that.
that was a good idea. So this was I was kind of like mulling around in my mind since this is a Twitch stream, a show. I wanted to do something that like had a visual element, but will also translate for the audio listener. And something like a tier list made sense, but like there's not a tier of NCL, so we're just doing like a pros and cons list. But we're gonna do it much the same way that a an Anthony Fantano might rank albums by a certain artist or something. We're gonna do it in that style, throw some garbage pictures on here and just use it as a jumping off point to kind of talk about each thing. Um, I guess I'll jump straight in here and say first thing on my mind is riders getting paid is a big pro, I would say.
Yep.
So the teams are well, and some of these are going to be more like esoteric concepts than others, and some of them are going to be a little bit more concrete. But I think the fact that the NCL has two teams and those riders are being paid well is a huge pro. Generally, teams in American racing are not getting, living salaries. So the fact that some riders are, I would say, is a big W for NCL.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, their riders getting paychecks, which is what we're hoping, what we're wanting the end game of crits to be as a actual professional, you can pay your bills and buy a house eventually career. And that's what they're providing to their riders.
And that's been the goal. I mean, like that's something I've lauded. If I was going to say something I like about Legion, the fact that that is their goal is to make a level of racing in America that is a goal unto itself, not just a stepping stone to Europe. Like It's
Yep.
more like choosing to go to Europe is like choosing to race mountain bike. It's just like a different thing from road. It's not like a stair step above. It's just a different option.
Right.
I will say some of these images for the people watching right now, some of these that are more esoteric concepts, I literally just typed them into one of the AI image generators. So what I typed in here was cyclists getting paid. So that's what you're seeing right here. This is what an AI thinks that looks like.
I think the AI is a nice touch.
Yeah, so you want to throw one of your pros or cons out here? Well, I guess we'll go back and
Let's
forth
go.
like that.
Let's go tit for tat. One pro,
Sure.
one con. Um, One con is going to be lack of organizational clarity.
I'm gonna
So,
call
like,
that I'm gonna call that tech bro energy. I had
yeah,
a similar con and a similar image. So there's a lot of like big flowery language about revolutionizing things and changing the game, and then a lack of specifics on like how that is being done or
yeah,
does that sort of cover what you were thinking there?
yeah.
You
That's
want to
exactly what it is. Is like there's a lot of copy and a lot of like marketing speak and very little. Like they're doing the. I'm going to give you as little info until it's time to show all my cards, and then here's my hand. And
and
they
my
they haven't shown the hand yet, so it's like you're just kind of like grasping, and there's not a lot of clarity on what's actually going
right.
on.
Yeah, it feels like it could be vaporware, hence the picture of this Theranos founder. I think for this I googled like disgraced tech founders or something like that. So we've got a picture of Martin Shkreli behind bars, and then
I was going to
the
ask if that
woman
was
from
Martin Shkreli.
Theranos. Yeah, yeah, a very poorly photoshopped image of the two of them. But I mentioned on the Criterium Nation episode that I get kind of a tech company pitch, which like could end up being a pro in the long run if they find a way to cash flow it. But it seems like the strategy of tech companies and of all of these other companies that are maybe not necessarily a tech company but want to frame themselves that way. I'm thinking of your Ubers, your Lyfts, is to just it's like the South Park thing of like step one blank, step two question mark, step three money bag. Like the
Right.
step two question mark, I'm still seeing the step two question mark there, but
Yep.
the plan is just to come in hot, eat up market share, scale, and then once you have scale, then you figure out how to make it profitable. And what we're seeing like in the transportation space is that your Ubers and Lyfts and like they've not yet found a way to do that. Now, I see that being more possible there because there is some level of like inelastic demand for transportation. So if you can get a stranglehold on that market, there is money to be made there potentially, but I'm not sure you corner the market on cycling, step 2 question mark, step 3 profit. I just don't.
It's a big question mark. Like
And
it
they
just
may
it just
I,
is.
I've heard all kinds of plans that they may have some ideas about turning it into a cycling studio business or metaverse subscription model or I I don't know. That is the deal with all of these companies is it's like I'm going to assume it's vaporware until it's not. Um
Yeah.
all right, if we're going pros and cons, I'm going to say just the riders and teams that are in NCL, like I want to see the riders that they have racing. They've got so
Yeah.
I've got an image of Clever Martinez from Intelligentsia Cup. I'm really excited to see him on this team. I think he's been an exciting racer to watch, and he was most exciting 2 seasons ago when he was a little bit outgunned actually on the Rockland Velo was the name of that team.
Yeah. Yeah, like that's the thing with Clever, you have Frank Travieso. Like I'm biased because Gabe Mendez is a long time friend of mine, but I'm excited to see him race. Sergio Henao, like some of the World Tour people that are coming in, like watching Skyline and Texas Roadhouse, like all of these teams. Like I'm excited to watch who they have, like personality wise, individuals in the race.
Yeah. I I'm gonna say that pairs directly with another one I've got though, which is a con is who they don't have. So
Yep.
you've got all the teams that turned him down. We got a picture of Justin and Corey here, but Legion most notably turned them down pretty publicly. I think they released a statement saying like, "Hey, we're not doing NCL," um,
Yep.
and that's a big con. I want to see the fact that we're not gonna have Clever and Justin going head to head in these races is gonna be a negative for a lot of people who care on some level about crit racing. There are a lot of people who are like truly in it for your legions, or I think automatic is honestly getting there at this point. Like they've done
Yeah.
a lot of work around sort of building a brand and building a following, and there are definitely Tom heads who are like, I'll wait for the races that automatic is going to race.
Yeah. Like I think just overall, there's also like a team disparity piece where like some of the teams aren't as well supported as some of the others. Like these like premier level teams, your Legion, Automatic. Was that a whole separate point from
Nope,
the?
I wanted to
Okay.
make sure that it wasn't. Yeah,
Okay. Like Legion, Automatic, American Cycling, CS Velo, 2024. Some of these like high level premier teams that we known to watch all the time, long standing, that we know and love are not participating, that are well supported, that do have the roster strength, aren't in, and some of the teams that are in, I don't think have the overall strength and support to
yeah.
be as competitive.
There are some teams that are in there that will struggle to be relevant in a race with a team as well supported and well put together as like your Supra Bars does not have ex World Tour riders in the same way that the NCL endemic teams do.
Yeah,
There's going to be some level of disparity there that's going to make it a little bit one-sided. Now, I mean, American racing has always been, or at least recently has been like that. But within the NCL races themselves, there's going to be a pretty big like stratification between the teams where like people are making salaries and people are not making salaries. And I think you're going to see that play out in the racing, both because of like the talent level that the teams that are paying a salary can attract, and just the fact that like if you're getting a salary to race your bike, you're going to be able to dedicate more training time. There's just like a level of dedication thing that
yeah.
I think is going to
Like
play out.
if it's also like if it's your job, you're gonna take more risks. You're gonna work that much harder because it's your paycheck on the line.
Right.
Like if this is your weekend, like I'm flying out to Boulder and then I'm flying right back Sunday night and I'm sitting at a desk Monday through Friday,
Yeah.
like you're not gonna take a risk doing the race that's gonna jeopardize your ability to make your paycheck on Monday. Like
Yeah.
so there's less of that all in mentality to it.
Yeah. Totally. And there's also going to be a stratification, I think, between the NCL teams that have had like I think a little bit more time to wrap their minds around this format and the ability to practice a little bit, at least early on, and
Yeah.
the teams that signed up, potentially in the last couple of weeks that are just now, scrambling the jets to be like, all right, we've got to race points races now, and we've never done that. So
Right. It's in Miami, it's going to be a little bit of a growing pain, but I think by Atlanta, by DC, they're like some of these teams that are new to it are going to figure it out. Um, let's
what have you
get
got
into
next?
another pro. So I'm not the only
Yeah.
one, just so I'm not throwing only cons out.
Yeah, go for it.
A pro is the big city venues.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
Miami, Atlanta, DC. I'm drawing a blank on the third. Is it Denver? Um, like these, you're going to catch people who aren't cycling people that are going to just be walking through downtown and be like, oh, what is this? Or Miami, they're going to be going to the beach and they're going to
Yep.
see a big bike festival and a lot of fanfare and wonder what's going on. I think that's one of the biggest positives is that they are
Yeah, they've gotten
They're
it
not.
right with
Yeah.
like choosing some I that is a pro if they can pull it off. I will say one
Yep.
thing, like we debated talking about a rumor that's flying around. One of the things that people have talked to me about in the interim period between the Criterium Nation appearance and this show is that there were rumors that Atlanta is not happening. Um, Ben did some digging on that, and what we found was that their permit for the Atlanta race, if you look up the public permit, which we did, it says that it was canceled by the organizer. Now, when contacted about that, Paris Wallace of the NCL said that they were changing the venue and it's not going to be at the Olympic Park, is where it was going to be.
Yep. Which, like, if
So,
you've been to Centennial Olympic Park, it's where the CNN Center is. It's where the Mercedes-Benz Stadium is. Like, it's like, and there's the big Ferris wheel. Like, it's like the middle of Atlanta. So I
yeah,
imagine that's a those are some pretty expensive blocks to close.
yeah. So I put this in the pro column of like, it is great to have these races in places that already have a level of like density and vibrancy,
Yeah.
but also potential caveat that that makes it really hard to actually do.
Yeah. Well, I
So,
do like this is a separate thought that I had because well, I'll just throw it out here since we're kind of
yeah,
talking about the same
go
thing.
for it.
Okay, the races are going to be in high traffic areas. So it's not one of those things where it's the Atlanta Olympics, but the race is in Conyers, right?
Hmm.
Like they're saying it's the Miami race and we're doing it on Ocean Boulevard. Or like it's Atlanta and we're doing it at Centennial Olympic Park. Like they're doing these races in areas that are like middle of the city. People are going to be there. I think that's a big pro. I
Yeah.
really do.
I'm going to say if you're in the chat right now, throw some pros and cons in there. Let's talk about them. I want to be interacting with the chat, a little bit more than we have been in the past. Um,
Yep.
Give a little incentive for people to watch live. I'm going to throw, I think we've got more pros than cons, honestly, on the list I've got. So,
I do.
another one I AI generated is I think I typed like gender and racial equity in cycling, and it just gave me this picture, just some amorphous people who don't even have real faces riding bikes. But the pro there is NCL is doing a lot around parity and racial and gender equity in their league, which I think is positive. They have a lot of athletes that are people of color that are non-endemic to cycling that are invested, and they also have. I think it's good that there have been a lot of efforts throughout cycling to elevate women's racing to the level of men's racing, and a lot of those have been good things, like in cyclocross, maybe making the women's event the final event of the day, so it's like in that premier spot. Things like that have been tried, but truly this format makes the women's race, it is not even just separate. It's not separate from the men's. It is that score goes into the men's score. It is weighted completely equally, so
Yep.
you don't have the option to not care about the women's race if you care about the actual standings and finish of the race.
Yeah, that's the main thing is like in order for Miami Knights to win NCL Invitational in Miami, their women's team has to perform as well as the men's team. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't happen. Like you can pay women equally, you can make the prize purses equal, you can do all of this, but at the end of the day, like what what makes this truly equal is it's all weighted the same for the whole team. There's not women's team and men's results and women's results. It's one result that both races are going into.
Yeah, someone in the chat mentions, am I misunderstanding something? Or are the two NCL teams both owned by the owners of the NCL league? And is that not a blatant conflict of interest, especially if they're racing for money against non-NCL teams? Yes. I'm going to say that's a major con, and I'm not sure how to sum that up in a funny little image, but I'm going to say, and that's a problem I had honestly with like Legion building out multiple teams and then doing Lions Den as well, is it does seem like, and I'm not saying that anything untoward is going to happen. I mean, these are races that haven't happened yet, so how could I comment on that? But it sets up an incentive for, and I think you saw this criticism of Legion for, it sets up an incentive to stack the deck in your own team's favors. And when Legion did Lions Den, which I think it's fair to say that this is like a natural outgrowth of the Lions Den type model. When Legion did Lions Den, they got a lot of flack for building a course that directly suits their team, fielding two teams in the race. They were just, and then doing the like, it's the biggest prize purse in cycling, and we're gonna win it ourselves. Like there was, I think rightfully so, a lot of flack about that. So I think that's a fair criticism. I think their goal is to get to a point where they have an entire league of teams that they own.
Yeah.
So
I
then
think,
there's not inter competition. That makes more
yeah.
sense to me, but they're not there.
Yeah. Well, there's there's the two pieces to it. Like the first being that their long-term goal is to have 10 teams they own that are part of the league that are operating separately. But then also the key difference between the Legion model, the Legion Aviators, Blazers model, and these two is that the owner of the NCL teams is not racing.
Yeah.
Like so they and we know for a fact the Denver and Miami teams don't collude, they don't intermingle with each other, they have no contact unless they know each other and
See,
are friends.
okay,
Like
that's
we know that they're not mingling, you
that's
know.
where it gets muddy for me because that was a thing that Legion said about, they were like, well, our two teams are racing against each other in Lions Den, and it's like, sure, but it's still it's a non-competitive atmosphere. Now, what I if NCL gets to the scale that they own the whole thing, I like the fact that NCL has an ownership group and then the teams are franchises within that versus if Legion were to build Lions Den or CRT into an entire league, and then the people who essentially own the league are racing in the league. Like you said, that's another level of complication that I think NCL strips out, sort of. But yeah, I'm gonna put in the negative column there all of the stuff about money that we raised on Criterium Nation, which, you know, there was a lot of lack of clarity around. They kept saying $1 million prize purse, and then it turned out that $1 million was conditional based on one team having to win multiple races within the series to unlock that $1 million. There was just a lot of like, I don't know, chicanery maybe is the word.
Yeah. Like to get the $1 million, you have to win everything. Like you have to clean sweep and then you unlock that. Like it's tiered and it was weird.
Yeah, it's like the prize for winning 4 races was not $1 million. There's an additional bonus that brings the total to $1 million only if someone wins all of that
Which
money. And that,
I mean, I think that's a cool thing. Like people are gonna hate on me after I say this, and that's fine. I'm in career sales, and like one of those things is you hit your quarterly quota your every year, and then you get a bonus annual quota if you hit each of your quarterly quotas, right? So
right.
I think like if that's the model, and it's if you get 100K for winning each 4 race, and then you get 600 if you hit all 4 of those. I don't hate that. I don't hate that model.
So my problem is less that, and I think Rob from Criterium Nation did a great job. Also, Rob said he might be tuning in. So Rob, if you're here, chime in the chat. But Rob made a good point about it, which was the the thing that was shady about it is that until our episode came out was not very clearly spelled out in a public place. So publicly they kept saying $1 million, $1 million, $1 million, but they had not said publicly like how you get to that $1 million. So I think that was
Yeah,
the kind of like a little
that's
bit of
fair.
a bait and switch, yeah,
That's fair.
criticism.
Yeah.
Um, let's see, you got one you want to throw out?
Yeah, I'll throw a pro in there since we spent like 5 minutes
Yeah,
talking shit.
yeah.
Um, the level of professionalism within the NCL teams is a big pro to me. Um, just like the way they're operating, like having everything paid out, paying salaries, everything being equal, like that's the level of professionalism that we want to see in all of the criterium teams that are seeing at a pro level.
Yeah,
And like they're doing it maybe like possibly to their own detriment, where it's like
sure.
everyone's getting the five team polos and they're getting a race bike and a training bike and all of this, but
Yeah.
it's there, and that's what we should be aspiring to.
You're saying
And
there's a
I think
danger they're going to burn through their runway too fast, but
correct.
it's good
Yeah.
that they are. I think truly like Legion kind of brought the expectation up to that level,
Yep.
and it's good that NCL is like kind of
Matching it.
saying like this is the standard if you want to
Yep.
be like a serious team, even just racing crits or primarily racing crits. Their teams are doing some stage races, but yeah, like this is the level in American stage racing, and it was that Legion was the only team that was on that level of professionalism, and now it's not. Okay, someone in the chat has said, "Will this only be on GCN Plus?" That brings me to
Yep.
an interesting one, which I'm calling this. I'm going to let it land right in the middle. GCN Plus. It will be streaming only on GCN Plus, which I think is actually a pro and a con. I think this is the only one that like splits the middle of this Venn diagram, because I think it's good that it being on GCN Plus leads me to believe that the coverage, and maybe I'm just falling for it, but that leads me to believe that the coverage will at least be good, and it will be somewhere that I can get to it easily.
Yep.
Um, but also, if their vision for this and something they've talked about a lot is getting non-cycling people to watch the racing, no one who's not a cycling fan is going to be able to access it on GCN Plus. Now, that may be they may have a whole plan around this. They may be creating, highlights packages and shipping them off to ESPN and trying to get on, whatever. I don't know, but they will only be live streaming on GCN Plus from what I understand, which
Yeah. Like we know they're partnering with Medalist Sports for their like streaming, which has been super reliable. So we know it's Medalist Sports doing the coverage, and then it's going to GCN Plus. So like we know it's going to be reliable. We're not going to have these random outages that we had with some other races last year. Um, but again, it's a streaming service that is cycling endemic. Nobody knows what GCN is besides
and
cyclists.
it's paywalled also.
Yeah,
It's not just going
and
on the GCN YouTube channel. It's going
right,
in the GCN Plus paywalled,
yeah,
separate app service.
right. And thankfully, GCN Plus is not an expensive streaming platform. Like it's $6 a month, maybe $7 a
It
month, or
is,
$50 a year.
yeah, it's by far the most reasonable of them,
Yeah.
especially if you use a VPN and you watch all the stuff you're not supposed to. You can get a
Yep.
pretty good value out of GCN. I mean, there's more. Even when I was injured and I was doing 12 hours a week on the trainer, like there were some weeks where there was more on GCN Plus than I could watch in 12 hours because there were multiple stage races going on at the same time.
Yep.
It's a lot of content, and
Yeah.
it's good.
But I mean, I was really hoping it was going to be on ESPN. Like that's what I wanted, because think about how many households in America have ESPN turned on 24/7 no matter what, whether they're watching Sports Center or Around the Horn or whatever game is on or highlights. Like,
You know,
so that was going to catch somebody somewhere who didn't give a rip about cycling until it just caught their eye that minute.
sure. My hope was actually, I get that, but I think like the next evolution is that we as cycling quit trying to be every other sport, and like I think the next evolution is putting it on um every platform. Like I think a league that is going live to Twitch, Facebook, TikTok, all the things, and they're doing them all well. Like they're not just like, if a league could actually engage with audiences on all of those platforms, maybe even in a distinct way that is like, have the little things that pop up on the screen when someone subscribes on TikTok, like TikTok streamers do, and have different chats and things that are specific to all of those platforms, and also go to all those platforms where people are already watching everything.
Yep.
I think that's maybe like the best bang for your buck. So pro and con on GCN.
I will say NCL being put on GCM Plus, like because we do this podcast, it moved the needle for me to go ahead and subscribe. So like there is that.
Yeah, and we've had at least one person in the chat. Matt
Yeah.
in the chat of the show right now said I signed up for GCN Plus for NCL. So that is a real thing. I guess that's a thing that's happening. So move the needle. Oh, I'm gonna say I bookmarked this in my mind. Hadn't said it. If you're not subscribed to GCN, there is a discount code. If you go through, there's an NCL discount code. So search for that. It's a few bucks off, and I'm sure it helps out the NCL if you do that. But even if you don't want to watch NCL races, you can subscribe to GCN for a little bit cheaper. So definitely do that. I'm going to throw out what I think is, I think I got one more of each here. So I'm going to go my last, con, and then we'll end on a pro. How's that? So
That works.
my
Well,
last
I have
con.
another con.
Okay.
So let's do two cons and a pro.
Sure. You go.
Okay. There's no individual recognition. I think it's a con. Because
Sure.
like I want to see the stats for how many points Frank Travieso scores, and like I think it'd be cool to like have recognition for the person who scores the most amount of points that weekend or for the series, and like that's going to be missing. So I
Yep.
think it's a con that there is only team recognition. I'd like to see both. I
I,
don't know.
I can see that as a pro and a con. I'm going to put it in that column. Um, I think that was one of the things that really rubbed Rob Kelly of Criterium Nation the wrong way, is he kept saying like everyone should just understand already that it is a team sport. And that's a point he tries to make on that show a lot, is
Mhm.
that um even in crit racing where there is one winner, an individual winner, that winner is the result of the work of their entire team.
Yeah.
I don't hate that it is a different format, and I think I kind of am more like amenable to that format because I've done ZRL races in Zwift and enjoyed that format, and it is, I don't know, it's different. I like it. Um, yeah, I think there's something to be said for that. But all right, here's my other con, which this one's a little bit esoteric, but it's just the rock racingness of it all. And I say that this is my go-to example on Criterium Nation, but just the fact that like in cycling we have seen uh, these large promises sort of flame out several times. It's kind of a thing that even with the original NCL, it seems like there were some bigger and bigger promises made, and at some point the checks started to bounce, and that's just a cycle we see over and over. So I'm going to say, just like it is an uphill battle, even if this league is not structured in a way where that is going to happen. The reality of the history of things like that happening is a ding against them. Like that
Yeah.
puts them on an uphill. They're starting uphill and they got to get clipped in.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, cycling fans and cyclists and pro racers have been burned so many times that whether it's teams folding and paychecks not being cashed or riders that we love and look up to getting popped for doping, like we just get burned so often that it's hard to like fully support something without seeing the proof first, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
There's so many reasons for healthy skepticism.
yeah.
Yep. So I'm gonna say the last pro that we sort of both and this is something that we both put in the pro column. I
Yep.
think other people might put it in the cons, but points racing, I am excited to watch points racing. Like I was saying a minute ago, I've done like a format like that in ZRL and enjoyed it. I think it makes for interesting racing. I don't love the structure theoretically. Again, I'm only like gaming this out in my mind of there being points on every single lap. I think that's going to kind of like mute how intense those sprints are. But I like that it's a different format. I like that we're trying something out. And I do think that it'll be interesting to watch. What do
Yeah.
you think about that?
Yeah. Again, I put the points racing in my pros as well. I think it'll like bring some fresh air into it, make it a little bit different. I think it'll do one of two things with the points being available every lap. It'll either mute those sprints, or which I think the NCL is thinking, which it will like make those much more intense and like create a little more like jockeying for position a little bit more. Make it a little
Yeah, I don't
more
know.
aggressive each lap.
I'm
I don't like
I'm
it'll
not
go one of two
convinced.
ways, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I guess we're going to find out on, and it may be that like the first one kind of goes one way and then teams have to like rework their game plan.
Yeah.
You know what? We said we were going to end on a positive, but I do have one more, which is a negative that, thinking about the race format is making me think of, which is the races are too short. These are going
Yeah.
to be short races. From watching the 94 Toronto race that we were looking at earlier, it was like a 45-minute race, and maybe not all of it was televised. There's some commercial breaks in there, and they did a halftime, but it seemed like an extremely short race, and it was also 30 laps, and the laps were like, a minute 45 or something like that. So we may be seeing some extremely short races, which I think NCL sees as a positive for people's attention spans and maybe the ability to um, broadcast something that is more bite size. But for me as a fan, um, the races that have been most interesting in recent years have been longer races.
Well, I'm gonna push back on that.
Okay.
Okay. Think about the 100K Tour de France stages that have been absolutely explosive
Yeah.
and extremely impactful for the GC. So it'll be either of the two where it's like not short enough and people aren't getting tired, or because it's so short, people are going to blow through their match book and it's going to explode.
Yeah. And I think that's what NCL is betting on. I'm just not sure that. So, like, a short stage within a grand tour has been very exciting recently. And I think that is because those stages are too long. I think we may just be zeroing in on what is the um, optimal length for an exciting race on road bikes. And I think what we're going to find is that somewhere around the 2 hour mark is
Yeah.
for a viewer the sweet spot of like it's long enough that dynamics play out and like the cream rises to the top, but not, a Milan San Remo level insanely long slog
Yeah. I
that's,
mean, I
not
think
watchable.
I think UCI mountain bike has it right at 90 minutes. Like
Yeah,
no
agree.
one no one's saying, God, that race was too short or that race was too long. They're like
Yeah.
90 minutes, I know what I'm getting. And like sometimes it's, Schurter out front for 45 minutes, and sometimes it's a group of five battling for 90 minutes and you don't know what's going to happen till the last lap.
Yeah.
Um, I think that 90-minute mark is 90 minutes, 2 hours is probably ideal. But again, maybe with point sprints every lap and like team disparity and things like that, I think maybe the NCL being that 45, probably closer to 45 minutes if we're being real. 45 minutes may see some really intense, hard racing that might make it more exciting than something that's 90 minutes too. Like we just don't know until we see it, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I think you've hit a good note to close it on, which is we're not going to know until we see it. I am still open to it being good. We're going to find out on Saturday. Um, we'll be watching. We'll be talking about it next time on this show. You got any other closing thoughts, Ben?
No, that's about it. We just won't know what the NCL looks like until we see it on Saturday.
Cool. Well, hope everybody has enjoyed the show. Thanks again to Rob from Criterium Nation for having me on that program. I'm sure they'll be talking about the NCL as well after the fact. Yeah, I want to say, like, I would love to right now say, like, oh, look for X and Y content on this YouTube channel about NCL, but truly the way that this first race goes is going to dictate what kind of content I do about it. So
Yep.
I'm going to wait and see like what the important storylines are. And yeah, thanks everybody.
The best way to stay up to date on that and see what content is coming is like this video,
Yes.
subscribe, turn notifications on, follow us on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcast. If it's Apple Podcasts, like, subscribe. That's going to be where everything happens.
Yep. Next time we need to say that before an hour and 26 minutes in, but
yep.
Yes, definitely. We'll get better at that next time.